An experienced Civil War surgeon could amputate an extremity in 3 minutes. But speed didn't matter if he wiped his knife on his coat sleeve before making the incision. The enemy wasn't trauma, it was infection. In a world without antibiotics, amputation saved lives. Let's bust a few myths about Civil War medicine. My name is Bill Campbell, and I'm a retired Army neurologist and a retired Veterans Administration neurologist, and author of the Civil War novel, Soldier for the Union. I decided to write the novel after learning about all the brave women who fought disguised as men in the Civil War, and that many of them had their identities discovered when they had to visit the field hospital for a combat injury or for an illness. I've discussed the topic of women soldiers in earlier videos and Substack posts. The medical and military parts of my brain got together and conspired to persuade me to write a book about these women soldiers from the perspective of a battlefield medical unit. So the story is told from the viewpoint of the regimental hospital of the 116th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry. To write this novel, I knew I needed to educate myself about Civil War medicine. So flash back to the spring of 1969 when I was a third-year medical student at the Medical College of Georgia in Augusta. I was completing my 3-month internal medicine rotation, and in those days, oral exams were a regular part of life. I found myself sitting across the desk from our chairman of the Department of Medicine, who was not happy with my body of knowledge concerning myeloproliferative disorders. These include blood cancers like chronic myelogenous leukemia. The man grilling me was Alfred Jay Bollet, and he went by Jay. Dr. Bollet was a New Yorker who was doing what amounted to missionary work in the Deep South for a few years. Dr. Bollet was everyone's idol. He was kind and smart, the sort of man we all wanted to emulate. I stayed in Augusta and did a straight medicine internship, so Jay Bollet was my department chair for that year as well. I probably last saw him sometime in the early summer of 1971 at some sort of end-of-the-year festivity after internship. I wanted to depict Civil War medicine in Soldier for the Union in a realistic way, not a Hollywood way. So I began to look for books about Civil War medicine. One book that appeared quickly on the radar was Civil War Medicine, Challenges and Triumphs by, guess who? Jay Bollet. Not my Jay Bollet. Yes, my Jay Bollet. Not only was he a world-class rheumatologist at the zenith of his profession, he had a side gig as an expert on Civil War medicine. As I read through this authoritative and entertaining book, I felt as though I was teaming up through the ether with my old chief, that he was still teaching me. It triggered so many memories, like the time I was presenting to him on chairman's rounds and my tongue got tangled between the words pollen and allergen and stammered out a nonsense word, polygen. He just laughed. Reading that book became at times almost a magical experience. And Dr. Bollet has a lot to say in it. Let me read the first paragraph. The Union and Confederate medical departments performed dismally as the Civil War began. They quickly improved and delivered excellent medical care. Their disastrous start was widely reported. Their improvements weren't. This resulted in the erroneous assumptions that huge numbers of limbs were lost to unnecessary amputations and that surgery was often done without anesthesia. In fact, when the subject of Civil War medicine arises, most people's first response is usually, "Oh, all those amputations," even 130 years after the war ended. The inconvenient truth is that amputation saved lives. In an era when the germ theory of disease was but a glimmer on the horizon, and nearly 80 years before the development of the first antibiotic. By the end of the war, surgeons universally agreed with the aphorism, "Better alive with 3 limbs than dead with 4." It's a common cognitive trap to assume people in the past were benighted bumpkins. But the historical record makes it clear that Civil War physicians were just as smart as we are and did remarkably well given the knowledge base and technology of the time. I plan to discuss more from Dr. Bollet's book in future posts and videos. Approaching the topic of Civil War medicine reminds me of something the poet A.E. Housman once said. The sum of all that is to be known is inexhaustible, and however long we read, we shall never come to the end of our storybook.